The body is not a machine that simply wears down. It is a system that responds constantly dynamically to how you treat it. Every good night of sleep is a deposit. Every resistance training session is an investment. Every real meal, every meaningful relationship, every moment of genuine rest. These are the things that determine not just how long you live, but how fully you live in every decade that follows. You cannot stop the cliffs, but you can absolutely determine how hard they hit. Now you know. What you do with it is up to you. But let's go deeper. Because knowing that these cliffs exist is only the beginning. What most people never ask is why. Why 44? Why 60? Why not 50? Why not 30? The answer lies in something far more ancient than modern medicine. Something written into your biology long before doctors existed, long before language existed. Something that was never designed to keep you young forever. Your body was never built for longevity. Let that sink in for a moment. Evolution does not care about your 65th birthday. Evolution does not care about your retirement. Evolution does not care about the life you want to live at 70 or 80 or 90. Evolution cares about one thing and one thing only: reproductive success. From a purely biological standpoint, once you have reproduced and raised your offspring to independence, your body's primary mission is complete. Everything after that is borrowed time. Biologically speaking, you are living in overtime. This is called the disposability theory of aging. And it explains with brutal precision why the body starts pulling resources away from maintenance and repair, right around the years when our ancestors would have finished raising their children. At 44, your hormonal landscape shifts in ways that directly reflect this evolutionary logic. Estrogen and testosterone, which do far more than regulate reproduction, begin their long decline. These hormones protect your bones. They protect your cardiovascular system. They maintain the density of your skin's collagen matrix. They regulate mood, motivation, and cognitive sharpness. When they begin to fall, the downstream effects touch everything. And your body, on some primal level, is simply following an ancient instruction. An instruction that was written for a world where 40 was old age. The problem is that we are no longer living in that world. We live in a world where 44 is the middle of a career, where 60 is the beginning of a new chapter, where people are raising children at 35, starting businesses at 50, running marathons at 65. Our ambitions, our relationships, our sense of who we are and what we want from life have completely outpaced the biological timeline we inherited. And that gap between the life we want to live and the body that was programmed for a shorter story is exactly where modern longevity science lives. Because the question is no longer just, how do we live longer? The question is, how do we reprogram the ancient instructions our bodies are running on? And the answer is closer than you think. Let's talk about something called epigenetics. Because this word changes everything. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed that your genes were your destiny. You were dealt a hand at birth, and that was that. Aging, disease, decline, all written in your DNA, fixed, immutable, inevitable. That belief is now considered outdated. What we now know is that genes are more like switches than sentences. They can be turned on or turned off, expressed loudly or silenced completely. And the things that control those switches are not random. They are behavioral. They are environmental. They are within your influence. Your DNA has not changed since the day you were born. But the way your body reads that DNA changes constantly. Every decade, every year, every day. In response to what you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how much stress you carry, how connected you feel to other human beings. This is what epigenetics means. And it is perhaps the most hopeful scientific discovery of the last 50 years. Because it means that the aging cliff at 44 is not a wall. It is a signal. A biological alarm system going off, asking you to change the inputs. Asking you to stop running the software of your 20s on the hardware of your 40s. One of the most powerful epigenetic clocks ever developed is called the Horvath clock, named after UCLA biostatistician Steve Horvath. It measures methylation patterns across your DNA, chemical tags that accumulate and shift over time, and uses them to calculate your biological age with remarkable precision. What Horvath and other researchers discovered is that biological age and chronological age can diverge by as much as 15 to 20 years. In either direction, think about what that means. Two people both 45 years old. Same birth year. Same candles on the cake. But one of them has the biological profile of a 32-year-old. And the other is already running the biology of a 60-year-old. Same age. Completely different bodies. Completely different futures. And the differences between them are not luck. They are not genetics. They are choices, accumulated over years and decades. Compounding quietly the way interest compounds in a savings account, or the way debt spirals when you keep ignoring the balance. Talk about one of those choices that almost nobody takes seriously enough until it's too late. Chronic stress. Not the occasional stress of a hard week or a difficult conversation. I'm talking about the low-grade, persistent, background hum of stress that modern life has normalized to the point where most people don't even recognize it as stress anymore. They just call it life. When your body perceives a threat, real or imagined, it releases cortisol. Cortisol is not your enemy. In short bursts, it is a survival tool. It sharpens focus. It mobilizes energy. It prepares you to act. But when cortisol stays elevated day after day, week after week, year after year, it becomes one of the most destructive forces in the human body. Chronically elevated cortisol suppresses immune function. It breaks down muscle tissue. It promotes visceral fat accumulation, the dangerous kind that wraps around your organs and drives inflammation. It disrupts sleep architecture. It shrinks the hippocampus, the memory center of your brain, measurably, visibly on an MRI scan. And critically, it accelerates telomere shortening. Telomeres are the protective caps at the end of your chromosomes. Think of them like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time a cell divides, the telomere gets slightly shorter. When it gets too short, the cell can no longer divide. It either dies or it enters a zombie-like state called senescence, where it stops functioning properly but refuses to die and instead releases inflammatory signals that damage the surrounding tissue. This is cellular aging in real time. And chronic stress drives it faster than almost any other factor. Nobel Prize-winning biologist Elizabeth Blackburn, who discovered telomeres and the enzyme that repairs them, spent decades studying what shortens them and what protects them. Her conclusion was striking in its simplicity. The single greatest predictor of telomere length was not diet, not exercise, not genetics. It was perceived stress. Specifically, how threatened and out of control a person felt in their daily life. People who felt chronically overwhelmed, chronically reactive, chronically like life was happening to them rather than for them, aged faster at the cellular level. Measurably, consistently, across thousands of subjects. And the people with the longest telomeres, the youngest biological profiles, reported something specific. Not the absence of stress, not perfect lives, but a sense of agency, a belief that their actions mattered, that they had some degree of control over their circumstances. That meaning existed in what they were doing. Purpose protects your DNA. That is not poetry. That is peer-reviewed biology. Now let's talk about your guts. Because in the last decade, the science of the microbiome has rewritten everything we thought we knew about aging, inflammation, immunity, and even mental health. You are not just a human being. You are an ecosystem. Inside your digestive tract right now live approximately 38 trillion microorganisms. Bacteria, fungi, viruses, archaea. A community so complex, so metabolically active, that scientists now refer to it as your second genome. And that second genome ages alongside you. In young, healthy individuals, the gut microbiome is diverse. Hundreds of species in dynamic balance, producing short-chain fatty acids that feed the gut lining, synthesizing vitamins, regulating immune responses, producing neurotransmitters including 90% of the body's serotonin. But with age, and especially with the lifestyle patterns common in modern Western societies, that diversity collapses. The beneficial species decline. The inflammatory species proliferate. The gut lining, which should be a selective barrier, becomes permeable. Fragments of bacterial cell walls leak into the bloodstream, triggering a low-grade immune response that never fully resolves. This is called leaky gut. And it is not a fringe wellness concept. It is a well-documented physiological phenomenon, directly linked to the inflammaging we talked about earlier, the chronic systemic inflammation that accelerates aging at 60 and beyond. What damages the microbiome? Ultra-processed foods, antibiotics, chronic stress, sleep deprivation, sedentary behavior, and ironically, the excessive hygiene and sanitization of modern life that has left our immune systems without the microbial training they evolved to receive. What protects and restores it? Fiber in abundance and variety. Fermented foods, yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso. Time-restricted eating, which gives the gut's cleaning cycle, the migrating motor complex, time to complete its work between meals. Spending time in nature. And again, stress reduction, which directly modulates the gut-brain axis in both directions. Your gut is not just where you digest food. It is a command center. And keeping it diverse and resilient is one of the least discussed and most impactful things you can do for the speed at which you age. There's one more thing I want to talk about. Something that ties all of this together. Something that the longest-lived populations on Earth, the so-called blue zones, share without exception. It is not a supplement. It is not a diet. It is not a fitness protocol. It is ikigai, a Japanese concept loosely translated as reason for being. The thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, not out of obligation, but out of genuine pull. The intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what sustains you. In Okinawa, historically one of the highest concentrations of centenarians on the planet, researchers found that virtually every person over 90 could articulate their ikigai without hesitation. A 94-year-old fisherman who still went to the water every morning, not because he had to, but because the sea was his reason. A 102-year-old woman who taught traditional dance to children in her village because passing on beauty was her purpose. These people were not aging slowly because of their diet alone. They were aging slowly because every morning they woke up with somewhere to be. Something that needed them. Something that made their existence feel necessary. The biology behind this is now well understood. Purpose activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and repair mode, more consistently than almost any other behavioral factor. It reduces cortisol. It improves sleep quality. It promotes social connection. It keeps the brain cognitively engaged, which is one of the strongest protections against neurodegeneration. Purpose is not a luxury. It is not self-indulgence. It is a biological requirement for healthy aging. So here is where we land. Here is the full picture. Your body has biological cliffs at 44 and 60, written into it by evolution for a world that no longer exists. These cliffs are real, measurable, and they will arrive whether you are ready or not. But you are not passive in this story. You have more influence over your biological age, your cellular health, your brain function, your energy, your face, your future, than any previous generation in human history has ever had access to. The science is here. The tools are here. The knowledge is here. The only question is whether you choose to use it. Start sleeping like it's medicine. Move your body like your brain depends on it, because it does. Eat in ways that feed your microbiome, not just your appetite. Manage stress like the cellular poison it is. Build relationships deep enough to matter. Find the thing that makes your existence feel necessary and protect it. You cannot negotiate with time, but you can absolutely negotiate with biology. The cliffs are coming. They come for everyone's. What you decide to do between now and then is the only variable that has ever mattered. Now you know. The rest is yours.